You lock your front door to keep the monsters out. You close your blinds to block the eyes of strangers. You build walls of wood, brick, and concrete to create an impenetrable sanctuary for your family. But in the winter of 1987, millions of people realized that their walls were entirely useless, because the stranger didn't come through the front door. He came through the glass box in the corner of the room, without warning, without a manifesto, without a single digital fingerprint. A hostile entity seized absolute control of the most heavily guarded broadcast frequencies in the United States. It wasn't just a prank, it was a devastating act of electronic warfare. A physical impossibility executed with multi-million-dollar hardware by an invisible phantom. The FBI launched a massive manhunt. The FCC tore the city apart. Experts concluded it was an inside job, a rogue genius, a digital terrorist. Yet, despite a nationwide investigation, they never found him. Welcome to the archives of blood. To truly comprehend the sheer terror of this incident, you have to completely erase the modern world from your mind. In 1987, there were no streaming services, there were no smartphones, no social media algorithms feeding you personalized realities, and no internet to fracture the cultural consciousness. In 1987, reality was a shared experience dictated by a massive centralized monolith, broadcast television. When something happened on the evening news, the entire city of Chicago experienced it at the exact same millisecond. The television networks were the untouchable gods of information. They beamed their signals from the colossal antennas on top of the Sears Tower and the John Hancock Center, completely dominating the sky. The broadcast was considered a closed, impenetrable system. It was a one-way mirror. The network spoke, and millions of people listened in the safety of their living rooms. You trusted the signal. You assumed it was vetted, sterile, and entirely safe. The idea that a rogue, unauthorized entity could force its way into this one-way stream and physically hijack the eyes and ears of a city was not just illegal, it was considered a physical impossibility. But on the evening of November 22nd, someone proved the gods could bleed. It was 9:14 p.m., a quiet, freezing Sunday night in Chicago. WGN-TV's Channel 9 was broadcasting its primetime news segment, the 9 o'clock news. Sports anchor Dan Roan was on the screen, casually narrating the highlights of a Chicago Bears football game. Hundreds of thousands of families were watching. It was the epitome of routine, mundane American broadcasting. And then, the system collapsed. Without any warning, the signal was brutally severed. The news anchor was violently wiped from the screen, swallowed by a sea of erratic static and scan lines. For several agonizing seconds, televisions across the city plunged into darkness. And when the image returned, it wasn't Dan Roan. A figure materialized out of the static. It was a man wearing a deeply unsettling frozen smiling mask of the 1980s AI character Max Headroom. Behind him, a strange, corrugated metal panel swung back and forth hypnotically. There was no voice, no manifesto, just a terrifying, oscillating electronic buzz pouring out of millions of speakers, vibrating in the living rooms of terrified viewers. Inside, the WGN broadcast control room at Bradley Place, pure panic erupted. Engineers scrambled, slamming buttons on their massive analog consoles to cut the feed. But their consoles were dead. Their local controls had been completely overridden. Someone from the outside had seized absolute tyrannical control of the station's massive transmitter. The only way WGN engineers could stop the intrusion was by physically changing the frequency of their studio-to-transmitter link, effectively dodging the attacker's signal. After 21 seconds of bizarre, silent terror, the news broadcast returned. Dan Rohn, visibly shaken and confused, looked at the camera and simply said, "Well, if you're wondering what happened, so am I." The authorities were immediately notified. Signal hijacking was a major federal crime, but engineers assumed it was an isolated prank, a one-time glitch by a local amateur with a lucky antenna. They were dead wrong. The ghost was just warming up, exactly 2 hours and 2 minutes later, 11:15 p.m. Across town, the local PBS affiliate station, WTTW Channel 11, is broadcasting an episode of the British sci-fi classic Doctor Who. It is late. The station is running on a skeleton crew. Most of the senior engineers have gone home for the night. There are no fail-safes ready. The defense grid is completely vulnerable. And the phantom strikes again. Without warning, Doctor Who is violently wiped from the screen. Heavy scan lines ripple across the glass. The mask is back. But this time, it is far more terrifying. This time, he is not silent. This time, he has audio. His voice is severely distorted, bouncing off the walls of an unknown claustrophobic basement. He begins a surreal, nonsensical, and deeply disturbing monologue. It feels like a fever dream of pop culture madness bleeding into reality. He mocks WGN pundit Chuck Swirsky, calling him a frickin' liberal. He hums the theme song to the old animated show Clutch Cargo. He groans in faux agony, clutching his head. He grabs a can of Pepsi, throws it at the camera, and screams, "Catch the wave!" A direct mocking reference to the actual Max Headroom advertising campaign for Coca-Cola. To the hundreds of thousands of people watching in the dark, this didn't feel like a prank. It felt like a demonic possession of their hardware. The 90-second transmission descends into total grotesque absurdity. The figure bends over, exposing himself off-camera, while an unidentified female accomplice in a French maid outfit repeatedly swats him with a fly swatter. He screams, "They're coming to get me. Come get me, bitch." And just like that, the signal fades to black. The analog snow clears, and Doctor Who resumes mid-sentence as if the nightmare had never happened. The WTTW engineers were completely powerless to stop it. Unlike WGN, WTTW's massive transmitter was located at the very top of the Sears Tower, the tallest building in the world at the time. To understand the gravity of this crime, you have to understand the sheer technological impossibility of what was achieved. Television signals weren't sent through the internet. They used an STL, a studio-to-transmitter link. The TV studio on the ground beamed a highly focused microwave signal directly to the receiver on top of the skyscraper. To hijack that signal, a teenager in a basement with a modified ham radio couldn't just tune in. It required brute force. The attacker had to physically place themselves directly in the line of sight between the studio and the towering skyscraper. And then they had to overpower the station's own multi-million-dollar broadcast equipment. They had to blast a stronger, dirtier signal than the TV station itself. This required incredibly specialized, commercial-grade, and exceptionally heavy microwave transmission equipment. We are talking about massive dishes, complex oscillators, and high-voltage generators. This wasn't a bored prankster. This was an act of high-level electronic warfare. experts concluded that the hijacker had to be an insider, an incredibly gifted broadcast engineer, perhaps a disgruntled former employee of the television networks. Someone who knew exactly where the blind spots were. By Monday morning, Chicago was in a state of absolute paranoia. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, the FBI, and the Secret Service launched a massive joint manhunt. If a rogue entity could so easily hijack a major television broadcast, the implications for national security were catastrophic. They could broadcast fake bomb threats, incite citywide riots, or interrupt emergency presidential alerts during the Cold War. It was a critical vulnerability. The ghost had to be caught. Agents scoured the city. They analyzed every single frame of the 90-second transmission. They determined that the corrugated metal background in the video wasn't high-tech. It was likely a motorized piece of pegboard used in retail hardware stores or a rolling garage door. They analyzed the video timing, concluding it was pre-recorded on a standard VHS tape, not broadcast live. They tracked down the specific Max Headroom mask to a local Chicago costume shop. Every clue led them exactly nowhere. With physical evidence lacking, the investigation dove deep into the underground world of freakers, the early pioneers of hacking who manipulated telecommunication systems for the sheer thrill of it. In the dark, text-based corners of 1980s, bulletin board systems, rumors swirled like wildfire. Hackers gossiped, pointed fingers, and claimed to know the identity of the ghost. Several compelling suspects emerged from the digital shadows. One name frequently surfaced in online lore years later: Eric Fournier, an eccentric, highly intelligent local musician with a deep knowledge of electronics and a notorious sense of absurdist, disruptive humor. He was the creator of a bizarre underground punk video series. He possessed the exact brand of chaotic, anti-establishment humor displayed in the hijack. He fit the psychological profile perfectly. Another theory pointed to a local tech enthusiast within the autism community, known in forums only as Bogo, who allegedly bragged about the hack at a party. But there was a massive problem for the FBI. Fitting a psychological profile is not evidence. Fournier or Bogo possessed the humor, but did they possess the hundreds of thousands of dollars in commercial transmission equipment required to overpower the Sears Tower? Did they have the engineering genius to align a microwave dish flawlessly in the dark? The FBI found nothing. Theories grew wilder. Was it an inside job by a disgruntled WGN engineer who wanted to expose the station's security flaws and embarrass his bosses? Was it a highly coordinated team of mercenaries driving a heavily shielded, lead-lined van through the city, executing a hit-and-run microwave strike while moving to avoid triangulation? Despite a massive federal bounty, despite intense national media scrutiny, and despite the passage of decades, nobody ever claimed responsibility. Not a single person stepped forward on their deathbed to claim the ultimate crown of hacker glory. Why? Perhaps because the crime was a Class 5 felony carrying severe federal prison time, the revocation of all engineering licenses, and crippling fines. Or perhaps remaining a ghost was the entire point of the performance. The anonymity made the terror permanent. To solve the mystery is to kill the legend. To truly understand the hijacking, you have to look at the mask itself. The character of Max Headroom was originally created as a biting, dystopian satire of corporate media. He was a cynical artificial intelligence trapped inside a television, mocking the very networks that created him. But the massive corporations stripped away the satire, sanitized his image, and used the character to sell billions of cans of Coca-Cola. The hijacker took the symbol back. He used the ultimate emblem of corporate television to violently, non-consensually violate the medium itself. It was pure, unadulterated cyber vandalism, a profound statement against the homogenization of culture. They proved that the monolithic broadcast gods were mortal, and that their multi-million-dollar fortresses could be breached by a madman with a microwave dish and a rubber mask. It has been nearly 4 decades. The federal statute of limitations has long expired. The perpetrators could walk into an FBI field office today, confess to everything, provide the original VHS tape, and face absolutely no criminal charges. And yet, the silence remains absolute. They pulled off the greatest broadcast intrusion in human history, exposed the terrifying fragility of the entire national communication grid, and simply vanished back into the static from which they came. An analog ghost story burned forever onto magnetic tape. In an era where every digital footprint is tracked, the Max Headroom hijacker represents a terrifying reality. Sometimes the monsters in the machine never get caught. Who do you think was behind the mask? A rogue engineer or a phantom of the underground? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Subscribe to the Archives of Blood.